Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the book of Ecclesiastes, and we're going to enter the text today. We're going to look at verses 1 through 3. We talked about them yesterday, but I do want to reiterate some of the things we said yesterday. And I know very few people all read this book the way I read it, but I think it's straightforward. I really do. I don't know a single commentary that reads it this way. But to me, verses 1 through 3 make clear what this book is about. So let's read it, and I'll remind you what I said yesterday, and we'll talk more specifically about the verses and the words in them. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does a man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? As I said yesterday, and the day before, I do believe that Solomon is the author of the book of Ecclesiastes. Most people don't believe that anymore. I don't think anyone else fits the description that's given of the author in this book except Solomon. But he calls himself throughout the preacher, the spokesman, someone who has something to say. And more specifically, based upon the verb kahal, because the Hebrew word is kohelet, someone who has assembled the tribe, because he has something to say. And it really has a New Testament connection, because what is the ecclesia, the church? Those who have been called to assemble. And what does a New Testament preacher do? He speaks to those who are called to assemble. And so he uses the word preacher, he uses the word koheleth, which preacher is really more of a New Testament word than an Old Testament word. But it's an accurate word because he's using it that way. Someone who has stood up to speak to the assembled. And that's how he's going to refer to himself throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. And then he, as we said yesterday, and as I'll continue to remind you, he's conducting a grand experiment because he has enormous resources to try anything he wants to try. He has power as king to do what he wants to do. And he has wisdom, God-given wisdom, to process his experiences and to come to the correct conclusions based upon them. And so he is conducting an experiment that only he in human history can conduct. And he's going to give us the results. But every experiment begins with an hypothesis. And his hypothesis is this. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. The Hebrew word hebel, which means like puff or breath, something that is not there, something that is empty. It means nothingness, it means nothing, emptiness, is rare in the Old Testament, but it's used 34 times here. And it's used 5 times in this one verse, 29 times in the rest of the book, but 5 times in verse 2. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, that's 4, and 5, all is vanity. That's his hypothesis. Unless we missed it, everything is nothing. It's emptiness. Everything in human here on earth is temporary. Nothing's new, and yet nothing's remembered. And nothing lasts. And it's just all emptiness. That's his hypothesis. Now, this is the question he's going to be investigating throughout the rest of the book. This is his grand experiment. What does a man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? What profit? We're here. So what should we be doing while we're here? What is profitable? What is productive? What is beneficial? How should we spend our time if everything is nothing? If there is no everything, there's only nothingness. And he has limited, as we said yesterday's experiment, to that which takes place under the sun. And he's going to repeat that phrase throughout the book, he is not allowing us to open the box, to open this habitat that we live in, this ant farm that God made for us, which is the universe, and let in eternity. Eternity is not going to factor in. It's hard for us as New Testament Christians because eternity factors into absolutely every verse of the New Testament. Jesus, from the very opening words, of the Sermon on the Mount and throughout all of his sermons is reminding us of eternity. But Solomon, and this is the frustrating thing for Christians reading this book, Solomon is forcing us to ask the question, without any pie in the sky, without any great by and by, what should we be doing here? We are here. If there is no eternity, what should we be doing here? And of course, the conclusion is the same. Fear God and keep his commandments. It's very much like Job, the book of Job, another greatly misunderstood book. But, you know, in the book of Job, Satan says to God about Job, listen, you pay him to serve you. If you stop paying him and make things hard for him, he won't serve you. And that's the grand experiment in the book of Job. Another book that is about a test, an experiment, the answer to a question, arriving at the answer to a question. Will anyone serve God if they're not paid to? And in Ecclesiastes, he's not allowing us to consider eternity in the equation. We're here on this planet, in this universe, under the sun, and if we take eternity out of the equation, and we look around us and we see that this is ephemeral, that nothing lasts, nothing is new, nothing lasts, it's all temporary, it's all ultimately empty. And let's think about this, because it's absolutely true. Most of the universe is empty space. I mean, it just is. Every atom is almost all empty space. Everything is almost all empty space. There's not much in the universe, really, if it were condensed to one point, as it was before God said, let there be light. You know, what he's saying is true, not just metaphorically true, it's actually true. And since it is true, then what should we be doing while we're here? What direction should our lives take? Okay, next time we're going to look at verses 4 through 11, this beautiful poem about the nothingness that is life on this planet. And we're going to start to really enjoy not necessarily the bleak conclusion that informs his hypothesis, but just the beauty of his language, which we get to enjoy throughout the book. There's so many just wonderful passages that we just love in this book, and we'll see one of them next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes.